Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's always a pleasure and a privilege when we get together to join together for these weekly updates. And thank you, all of you who share the links, who join us for these. I'm always grateful for all of you who are part of the family, if you will, that get together for these. And it's been something that's been of a challenge ever since I was a young man. People would say, I'm disconnected, I don't pay any attention to that stuff, I don't listen to the news. And I always felt like that was a very big mistake. Not knowing what's going on in the world is probably not to your advantage. And then there were those that were paying way too much attention. I was one of them. I would be one of those guys getting updates all the time and all that. And then I began to realize that was unhealthy and started to back away from that. So we found this pace to be once a week being a very good pace for us to be able to keep up with things that are going on in the world. And the way that we look at that, and something we say all the time, is that we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. And so being informed is important because you want to know the things that are going on, but you don't want to reach the point where you're overwhelmed. And so thank you to all of you who join us for these weekly updates and part of this journey. And we're certainly thankful for you, and certainly thankful for all you who share the links, who like and subscribe. So thank you for that. And for those of you that may be new here for the first time, we do have a great website called Remnant Watch, because we're told to watch. So remnantwatch.com. And this is where you're going to find the stories that we're going to cover each and every week. And so you've got, of course, our handy banner up here at the top that always brings you right to the latest weekly news update. And we also have these handy survival guides, which I'm telling you, folks, every single week, I see reasons to keep them there. And then we have this search bar here for any of the previous articles that we may have run that you may want to go back and take a look for. And also what's good about that is you can track trends, or you can look at things and say, for example, flooding or something like that. And you want to put that in there. You're going to see all the stories that we've covered on flooding. And it's quite a bit. So things like that, you can catch trends and things that have been coming up more recently. So great to see all of you here with us, and certainly thankful for all of you. And on that note, let's get into the news. And on tonight's top story, one of the things that we're watching very closely is the change that's going on in Eastern Europe. And of course, we've been watching this for some time, folks. This obviously is devastating news when there's war going on, when there's families being attacked. But now, between the economic situation and the attacks that are going on in Eastern Europe, it is looking dire for Ukraine and for that effort going on there. So those that were watching that, well, there's a lot of change going on there. And the U.S. troops are pulling out of Eastern Europe, and Trump is actually courting Asia. He just got Kazakhstan. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But this is coming out of Moscow. And of course, NATO has moved to reduce troops on its eastern flank as Washington holds a summit with Central Asian leaders. And meanwhile, populism may be behind U.S. leader Donald Trump's controversial statements about nuclear testing. And of course, a lot of it is got to do with just saber rattling to keep it all going. After all, most of what we watch, as we've discerned, is theater. And it's actually quite bad theater. I mean, it's not even good theater, guys. It's bad theater. They're not even good at this. So, but one of the things that we now are paying attention to, and the reality is that with this government shutdown, it has exposed all the areas that we're spending an egregious amount of money as a nation. And one of those areas, of course, is in defense of Eastern Europe. And it's actually something that Donald Trump campaigned and talked about a lot, was the fact that the United States was, in fact, shoring up the defense of Europe and was, in a sense, offsetting their budget because of its effort. And so this is yet another indicator of just how expensive it is to keep troops abroad, keep them all over the place. And now all of a sudden they are facing the very same situations as SNAP benefit holders here in the United States. So when we think about SNAP benefits, we only think of, the ultra poor, maybe people that are in the bottom of the economic rung, where you don't realize that affects even military personnel. So this has become quite a situation, and I believe it's going to get more dire. I do think they're going to try their best to plug this hole, but the damage has been done. The government of the United States no longer is trusted as a solver of problems, And that is going to have dire consequences going forward. So pay attention, folks, because that's something that you can't get around. And once you've lost confidence, once people have lost confidence in you, it's very difficult to recover. And we're seeing some changes going on, of course, in that same theater of operations. Turkey jumped into the conversation here with an arrest warrant. And the Turkish court issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu over Gaza genocide. So this story is about to thicken. This plot is thickening, if you will, and these situations are about to get more interesting. Turkey Istanbul Chief Public Prosecutor's Office issued arrest warrants Friday for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and 36 other suspects on charges of genocide related to Israel's military operation in Gaza. And the warrants target multiple high-ranking Israeli officials, including Defense Minister Israel Katz, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, Border and Security Minister Eyal Zamir, and Israeli Naval Forces Commander David Salama, according to a press statement from the prosecutor's office dated on November 7th. And so basically, investigation cites hospital attacks and civilian casualties as its basis for the charges. So the investigation centers on what Turkish authorities describe as the systematic violence against civilians in Gaza. The prosecutor's office cited specific incidents dating back to October 2023, including attacks on Al-Ali Baptist Hospital on October 17th and damage to the LB Baptist Hospital on October 21st, which resulted in numerous civilian casualties. So this story is far from over, folks. We're going to continue to see developments, I believe, as this unfolds. And we talked about this actually about a year and a half ago. We were watching this because we were noticing that there wasn't a rush to war. There was more a rush to prosecution of leaders who committed certain acts. This was a change of tack because normally armies go to war, right? Normally they send their armies to fight. And this time they were sending their lawyers. So it's clear that the Arab community has made a decision that they are going to employ lawfare as a mechanism of embarrassing and exposing to the world what they believe is to be egregious sins. So this is an interesting change of tactic that I do believe is actually working, although slower and more tedious. I do believe it is slowly eroding the basis of high ground that typically is associated with some of these types of operations, and now it is exposed. So that's interesting to watch. And again, we're going to be keeping an eye, of course, on the Middle East. It's an area that we watch very, very closely. But we also have to take a look at the rest of the world, because the rest of the earth is reacting to the things that are happening right now. And of course, scripture is coming to pass. We are seeing a repeat of things that already happened in the scripture and are happening again, because men continue to do the same thing. So one thing you can take confidence in is that Yahuwah keeps his word, that his promises are yea and amen. And if you do the same dumb things, you get the same stupid prizes. Just saying. Okay? So you win the same stupid prizes today that you would have won 2,000 years ago. Now, again, talking about Eastern Europe, right? So Ukraine state-owned agency, their energy agency, company says that all of its power plants are down after Russia's largest ever attack. So this tells me this is over. This tells me this is over. And I'll tell you why. Because winter's coming, and it's coming fast. And if you can't even heat or cool your nation, you have no electricity, they're going to have to evacuate the country. Okay? This is going to have to be an evacuation. That's how bad this is. All the thermal power plants operated in Ukraine's state-owned energy company, Centronegro, are down following the largest Russian attack, which targeted all of them. The company announced on November 8th. According to the company, the same thermal power plants that have been restored after attacks in 2024 were struck again with multiple Russian drones. Excuse me, guys. They really think these things work. I don't know what they're thinking. According to the company, the same thermal power plants that had been restored after attacks in 2024 were struck again. And Ukrainian forces downed 406 out of the 458 drones, including a Shahid-type attack drone launched by Russia overnight. And the Air Force reported Russia had launched 45 cruise and ballistic missiles, 9 of which were downed. So that means all the rest of them got through. So again, cruise missiles, hard to shoot down. Okay. And these are not even the ultra supersonic ones. These are just regular cruise missiles. And 45 of them were shot, 9 of them were brought down. That means, 36 of them got through, folks. So that's a lot of damage. They hit their targets. So like I said, I think this is coming to an end. I think it's coming to a brutal and rough end. And I don't believe the U.S. troops are going to be able to support or help. So as a matter of fact, right now, the government is just trying to keep its own people surviving. Trump suggests the U.S. won't pay any SNAP benefits during the shutdown, contradicting a court filing. So President Donald Trump suggested that the United States would not pay any SNAP benefits during the government shutdown. The Trump administration on Monday told a Rhode Island federal judge it would pay about half of the cost of the food stamp program in November. And about 42 million Americans receive food stamp benefits throughout the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. And so this has become quite a serious thing because they introduced this socialism years and years ago, got a whole lot of people used to it. Now they're demanding it as if it is a right instead of a privilege that is there in the event of difficulty. So this has now created a culture that has to be arrested. And it's not going to be easy, folks. This may have been intentional just to shake up this group of people because of the fact, when you hear the number at 42 million people, that's a lot of folks that are not only not in the workforce, but have no intention of re-entry. Okay, so that's a lot of heavy weight on a nation that other taxpayers, the people that do go to work and do pay taxes, have got to somehow figure out how to compensate for. That becomes difficult. Talk about unequal yoking. You've got another wheel that just doesn't want to turn. So I do believe this is going to continue to be a difficulty in the West. I believe the days of financing a lot of this is come to an end, and this is now causing serious devastation, folks. Look at this. Some SNAP recipients say they have to choose between rent and food amid halt in benefits because they became so dependent on this over the last week. Martina Santos said that she feels like she's been living a nightmare. The 67-year-old from the Bronx, New York, is one of the nearly 42 million Americans who saw their SNAP benefits lapse November 1st. Although the U.S. Department of Agriculture said it would partially fund the program using emergency funds, officials said it would take a few weeks to up to several months to get that going. So reality is, here's the reality on the ground, is that it is now a state of uncertainty. Okay, uncertainty. So where the vittles at, right? Where the vittles at? Ooh, that became a problem. And just like that, I'm sure there's a whole lot more people thinking about, I need to get a job. Okay, I'm sure there are. And so it probably did work for some people that, hey, maybe I should go take that job down at the local whatever. Maybe I need to go down and be a good worker down at the so-and-so and such. And I do believe that there's going to be some of that. But I also believe that there are some people, frankly, it's probably quite a significant number of them, that are almost irreparably damaged by this program. And what I mean is that once you got them used to this, it's going to be very difficult for them to go to work every day, clock in. You guys all know what it's like to go to a job. All of you that have a regular job and had to work and didn't like going and didn't want to go and would have rather stayed home and played video games are going to, obviously you have a different reaction to that. You're like, what are you talking about? This is just normal life. Better get up and move, boy. That's how you feel. But the reality is that's not what they're used to. And so this is going to be a shift. And I do believe that it's going to be a big one in the United States. So thinking that it's going to be no problem, thinking that it's going to come along with, no issues and everything is going to be fine. The government's just going to pass a new bill and everything's going to, no, we just exposed a major area of dependency that is causing serious issues in our world. So something for us to keep an eye on as we go, because I do believe that we're going to be seeing more and more effects of that. And that shutdown is, of course, affecting other areas, guys. And we've all been seeing some of these things in the news. People are really hurting, from airports to grocery stores, shutdowns leaving Americans scrambling. And so this is really exposing a lot of the supplemental ways in which the American government or the American culture was working. So much for a free capitalist society, it really wasn't. It was a hybrid of capitalism with a lot of socialism mixed in. And the impact of the longest federal government shutdown in United States history are reverberating around the country, leaving millions of Americans in limbo and igniting concerns about an economic downturn. I think we're already there, folks. Frustrated travelers were scrambling as more than 1,000 flights were canceled Friday and thousands more were delayed. Those who count on food stamps were in limbo also, as President Donald Trump's administration continued fighting in federal court to resist paying full benefits for November, as if they were holding the money and just sitting on it. Fact is, folks, they've got themselves a major problem. How in the world do they finance going forward? Are you a corporation or are you a republic? I suppose you ought to answer that question, seeing as you're going to have to sell some future bonds or something to get funding. So what are you? Don't you think you should know what those things are? Right? So I think those are things that are now being discussed, and that's why this is the longest shutdown in U.S. history. So it's not going anywhere. It's going to continue to be a challenge for all of you. And I think that's something we're going to keep an eye on. We'll come back to the story of the airports here in a moment. But before we get too far here, I want to get a couple of other stories in that we need to keep an eye on with regard, again, to Bible prophecy and the scriptural view of the world. And of course, the central theme of that is, of course, the Middle East, where we believe there are some theatrics going on. And now all of a sudden, Israel is warning Hezbollah is playing with fire and, of course, ready to start another conflict. Senior IDF officers terror group remains fully armed and funded despite Lebanon's ceasefire agreement. And, of course, they're already stoking this in the north. This is, of course, their battle, of course, on the northern border of Israel, as Hezbollah rebuilds its forces and Lebanon is accused of failing to enforce the ceasefire terms brokered last year. Israel's defense minister has fired off a warning to Beirut. Why aren't they just running up there? Well, because there's Turkish troops there, folks. On Sunday, Defense Minister Israel Katz said Hezbollah is playing with fire and the president of Lebanon is dragging his feet. The Lebanese government commitment to dismantle Hezbollah's weapons and remove it from southern Lebanon must be realized. Enforcement will continue and deepen. We will not allow a threat to the residents of the north. Well, the threat is there whether they will allow it or not. And the reality is that all status quo living in northern Israel has changed as a result of the conflicts in the north. And now, with the waning of the conflict with Gaza, it is highly likely we're going to see an increasing conflict in the northern part of the state of Israel, right in the border of, right where the Golan Heights is, and of course where Syria is, and Lebanon is, of course. So it's not surprising to me that we would start to see some saber rattling here as well. And of course, these are considered by Israel to be proxies of Iran. So whenever they go after Syria or Hezbollah or some of these other groups, they're essentially running their, thumbing their nose at the Iranians. Okay, and so this continues to be the constant battle going back and forth, and I don't think we're going to see an end to it in the near term. U.S. Space Forces are using 3 weapons to jam Chinese satellites via remote control. That's the latest report coming out of Bloomberg, which is really interesting. The U.S. military is close to fielding 2 new weapons designed to temporarily jam Chinese and Russian intelligence. Now, maybe this is giving them some confidence in confronting them, but I would suggest that this may be just bravado. Surveillance and reconnaissance satellites giving the Pentagon 3 counter space capabilities, according to new Space Force data. And the weapons, called Meadowlands and remote sensing terminals, will join a larger, less mobile counter communication system jammer, an upgraded Big Dish that was declared operational in 2020. Here's the thing. There isn't anything that they're building that their enemies don't already know about. And so a lot of this technology that they think will just sit in place in the time of a conflict might be the very first casualties of conflict. Maybe the very first signal you have a conflict is that these things are taken out. So again, I remind you all of Pearl Harbor, where there were plenty of boats and plenty of capability until there weren't. So, I mean, these things happen. War is a nasty thing. and it really shouldn't be prepared for like it's going to happen inside of a vacuum. It needs to be understood to be the messy thing that it is, which is why it should be abandoned as a method of resolving conflict between peoples. It just doesn't work. It only causes more. Even if you resolve the current conflict, you've now created new ones. Okay, so it's a big deal. And now we're seeing that there are those that don't have a good plan for the United States of America. And 3 researchers were charged with smuggling biological materials into the United States. The 3 Chinese researchers at the University of Michigan were charged with conspiracy to smuggle biological materials in the United States, the Department of Justice said. And so we're seeing a lot of different ways in which attacks on the United States are happening in terms of its sovereignty, its ability to maintain its territorial integrity, its financial integrity, and now, of course, some of these types of things that are going on as well. So something for us to keep an eye on. And what's interesting is there's a massive push to weaponize biology. I mean, for no other way to say this. And so there's a massive push in that regard. And I do believe that one of the major dangers that we all have, major danger, is our populations being too close together. For the first time, I would say, in our modern era, it has not only become detrimental to live too close together, it is deadly at a level that we've not seen before, if for no other reason than the contagions that we're all experiencing, but not to mention the increased violence, the increased hostilities, and the varying ways in which we are seeing crowd control, for lack of a better word. So being in the crowd means you'll be controlled. So there's that. We've not seen that confluence. We've seen each of these elements before, but the confluence of them all together is what's got us paying attention, got us pausing a bit here as we stop. And this is affecting everything in terms of status quo. In fact, despite there being so many sellers, I think that, what was the report that we got, guys? It was something like 500,000 more sellers than buyers. So you would think that would fuel a buying frenzy, right? So it'd be a buyer's market. No, that's just not what the case is. As a matter of fact, America's first-time home buyers are disappearing, according to this report out of MSN, and that's bad news for real estate. So at a time when she turned 40, Susie Payne had resigned herself to the fact that she would never be able to buy a home. Okay? A lot of people are giving up on the concept of home ownership. I'm not a big fan of MSN, so I'm not going to read their article, but I do think it's an interesting topic that is coming up, because I do think that we are experiencing a major shift back to centralized families. I believe that the massive push toward independence has backfired. It was a bad societal plan to begin with, and it's backfiring because it should backfire. And economically, it was unsustainable, as we are now finding out. So, again, a lot of times people are very hard-headed. Governments, policymakers, they're hard-headed about things that won't work. There's only so much water, and they just go ahead and build more houses because they won't listen to the logic that, hey, maybe there shouldn't be any more houses over here, seeing as you don't have any more water. Logical things, right? Nope, that doesn't matter. So we got entire towns in Arizona that got shut off from water because they overbuilt. And we reported on that last year. So again, there's a lot of foolish thinking that happened in the United States. A lot of unmanaged and poorly counseled decisions that are now coming back to roost. And they're all coming at the same time. So the United States is holding on a bag with holes, trying to fund it, meanwhile knowing full well that they're sending money to crooked and corrupt things. So this is going to get interesting before it gets done. And I think that's why a lot of their arguments were going on behind closed doors. A lot of it was about kickbacks and where's all this money's really going, because you don't really think they were talking about, SNAP benefits. Those guys don't spend all day talking about SNAP benefits. I can tell you that right now. Okay, so a lot of things are being shaken out, and now we're seeing more and more of it hit the news. Now, before we go too far, one of the things that we were warned about is that we would see pestilence in the last days, and we would see a lot of increase of this. And this is now, of course, something that we are seeing. more and more notifications and more outbreaks, if you will. So now there's a listeria outbreak in past meals linked to 6 deaths across 18 U.S. states. So listeria was found in pasta sold by Trader Joe's. So this is why you will be seeing less Italian pasta. And others in CDC urge people to check fridges and seek care if ill. So 6 people have died and 7 dozen have been hospitalized across the U.S. of an outbreak of listeria and pre-cooked pasta meals. And this is, of course, going to cause more and more consternation in the food area. And again, I'm not really 100% sure what the point of that is, but man, it has been non-stop. And it's certainly undermining our confidence in the food sector. Big food, right? We're all losing confidence in big food. So is that intentional? I don't know. But it's certainly amazing to see how much information has come out in just the last couple of years that essentially tells us maybe big food is not a really good thing for us to partake in. Okay. And so that's reality. Now, again, as I said, as these financial things start affecting the government itself, there are certain things it can no longer do. Just can't afford it, can't pay the people to show up, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the Trump admin may be forced to close part of U.S. airspace if shutdown lasts into the next week, Duffy says. So this is a Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warned Tuesday that air travelers will face mass chaos if the government shutdown drags into next week, including the potential closing of parts of U.S. airspace due to staffing shortages. So many people don't realize that air traffic controllers are working for the government. There are many air-related positions that make these airports work that are actually government positions, that are not actual private company positions. And so this is now starting to ripple. You can't pay them. They're not going to show up. If they don't show up, planes fall out of the sky, folks. So this is not a good sign. And basically what's now being advised, look at this, guys, and this is making travel only for the rich, because who can afford to do this? Flight chaos grips U.S. airports, as some airlines advise booking a backup ticket. So you have a backup ticket. You have to pay for 2 tickets just in case, just to make sure you get where you're going. Isn't that crazy? U.S. United, Southwest Airlines, American Airlines warn customers of potential schedule changes during the federal shutdown. So this is big. Over 1,000 flights are now experiencing delays as flight cancellations grow during the government shutdown. And of course, this is affecting not only just holiday travelers, but this is affecting business travel as well, folks. So a lot of business is now going to be affected because people can't get to a meeting. They can't get to the place they need to get to close the deal, right? To do business. This is going to affect us all across the United States. So this is not a small matter. It's not just about visiting grandma. This is also affecting the economy. And so that's why it's important for us to note this, because if you know that's coming, you would prepare accordingly. For example, if you now know that there's no power coming back anytime soon in Ukraine, you wouldn't sit there. You wouldn't sit there and think, oh, it's going to be fine. No, you're going to pack and you're going to get out of there, because you know you cannot heat or cool that place that you were living through the entirety of the winter. And it's not looking good that they'll be able to fix any of that before spring. So the damage that was done was extensive weaponry damage. And so it's not something they can just go quick and, patch back together. And so again, here we are in a situation where winter's coming, and you've got those side situations, and you've got 2,200 flights that are canceled nationwide. So what's going on here? A lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. And there's a reason for it. I'm sure we'll be shown what the reason is really soon, but this is a reality. Nationwide flight disruptions stretch into Sunday following cancellations or delays to thousands of flights on Saturday as Federal Aviation Administration limited capacity to 40 major U.S. airports amid the longest government shutdown in American history. So again, as I told you, the government is involved in a lot of these private commercial activities. So as a result, even though the airports might have been, private, or there might be private airlines, they are still dependent on government services to function. So Saturday saw 1,521 flights canceled nationwide, and more than 6,400 flights were delayed. That's a lot of people that were upset. And Saturday's figures surpassed those from Friday, which were 1,024 flights And since Friday, more than 3,700 flights have been canceled. So I want you to think about that for a minute. 3,700 flights canceled in the last few days. And of course, we had more yesterday. So it's not looking good. And I do believe that Duffy's prediction is accurate, that the American people are about to experience some major challenges. And again, there are forces who are very anti-American, who happen to own some of these interests, by the way, who are not exactly running to make America great again. They're not big fans of the American people. And a lot of our companies in the United States are owned by foreign interests who are not, again, big fans of the American people. So you might be being set up, America, more than you realize. And this, of course, is going to affect holiday travel, because for those of you that do that and do travel for those things, well, those things are going to be difficult. Holiday travel, mayhem of thousands of flights to be canceled at airports across the country due to shutdowns. So again, you're going to be seeing some difficulty just getting to grandma's house for that turkey dinner. Okay, there's going to be a tough time out there for a lot of folks. And I do believe that even when they get there, things are going to be rough, because even if things were suddenly fixed right now, it's going to take some time, folks, to recover. And there's been a lot of devastation, a lot of loss of jobs, and people are way behind on things. They're not a little behind, guys. They are way behind. We have never seen the number of vehicles that are in foreclosure, not a repossession, in the history of the United States. It's never been this bad. You got a whole nother bubble on its way with the vehicle bubble, if you will. And then on top of that, you have, more houses in again, 500,000 more sellers than buyers. So we've got major problems coming up. And to solve them, well, we just need robots, guys. Everybody just needs a robot. Didn't you know that? And then that's what you need. That's what Chinese company thinks. Chinese company's new humanoid robot moves so smoothly they had to cut it open to prove a person wasn't inside. Oh my gosh. That's a heck of an ad, right? It moves so nice. We had to prove there wasn't a person inside. Chinese electric vehicle maker Zheping has unveiled a new humanoid robot with such lifelike movements that company representatives felt compelled to slice it open on stage to prove a human wasn't hiding inside. Fortunately for the audience, there wasn't. Instead, the robot, named Iron, features a flexible human-like spine, articulated joints, and artificial muscles that allow it to move with model-like swagger. Model-like swagger, because that's important in a robot. You got to have that model swagger. I'm swaggering. Don't you want a robot that swaggers? What? Why you hating? Why you hating on a swaggering robot? We want swagger. It's crazy, man. I don't even know what is this Earth? Where are we, man? Where are we, guys? How did we land here? Okay, how did we land here? Not good. Not good at all. By the way, there was a package that showed up at one of the Air Force bases that all of a sudden got a bunch of people sick. I don't know if you heard about that. I just throw this in there for the sake of FYI, but very interesting. So there's, again, more stuff happening at military bases that isn't good. The package contained negative sentiments toward President Donald Trump, but there were no specific threats toward the president or the government officials. And they evacuated a building, what have you. I seem to recall that some people fell ill, but that might have been psychosomatic. Nevertheless, tells you a little something about the state of our world. We are in a bit of siege, and that siege mentality is probably going to continue. On a side note, did you know that more Americans, and this is just like, hey, let's take a levity break real quick. Did you know there's more Americans than ever are now reading their Bibles, which is great. Problem is, which ones are they reading? And more Americans are reading, and there are fewer believe it's actually accurate. And I think they have good reason for that, don't you guys? So they're starting to figure out that, yep, we need to read the Bible, but we need to get the right one. So with millennials and Generation Z's leading the way, particularly among men, Bible reading among U.S. adults in 2025 is at its highest levels in the last 15 years, according to the new data from the State of the Church Initiative, an initiative by the Barna Group and Glue, collected data from 12,116 online interviews conducted between January and October 2025, and the research revealed that approximately 50% of self-identified Christians report reading the Bible weekly, the highest level of Bible reading among Christians in more than a decade. So this is a good trend. It's indicating that people are asking new questions. Unfortunately, again, you cannot get free with the Bible they give away in prison. One more time. You cannot get free with the Bible they give in prison. There's too many things they put in there to trick you. So this is why we have to continue to battle for that. It's an ongoing fight, but I'm certainly encouraged to hear that many more believers, more people are picking up the book, if nothing else, and maybe their skepticism is well earned. How about that? Okay. Speaking of Bible prophecy and things coming to pass, here's an interesting story. How many have been paying attention to this? Mr. Peace President has been continuing to push his Abraham Accords, and Trump says more nations are lining up to join the Abraham Accords after Kazakhstan. This is, of course, in Central Asia. So we did hear that he was courting Central Asia, and this is why. President Donald Trump said Kazakhstan will join the Abraham Accords, with more nations expected to follow, normalizing relations with Israel. President Donald Trump said more countries are lining up to join the Abraham Accords in an effort to normalize relations with Israel. Kazakhstan is expected to join the Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco, which had formalized relations with the Jewish state. On Thursday, Trump said he spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Qasim Jomart Tokayev of Kazakhstan. And Kazakhstan is the first country of my second term to join the Abraham Accords, and the first of many, Trump wrote on Truth Social. So this is a major step forward in fulfilling Daniel's prophecies. It's a major step forward in a covenant with many. So we're all going to continue to watch as this unfolds. Do you ever feel like you're watching a movie? I do. Lots of times. Speaking of movies, how many know that this is something that continues to be a problem in the world? And we, of course, have continued to report about this since we first began our weekly news updates. We have been on this topic. And I got to tell you, it continues to sicken me that there are those who feel so entitled that they can put cameras wherever they want to. This is a very, very sick thing. I hope they get the book thrown at them. And I think that is one of the most reprehensible things you can do. Chiropractors used hidden cameras to record over 180 nude patients, officials say. That's sick, dude. Sick. A chiropractor in Illinois is facing numerous criminal charges for allegedly recording nude videos of his patients. Investigators say Hudson used hidden cameras to secretly record more than 180 of his patients as they undressed or were already unclothed. The Kane County State Attorney's Office said officers arrested Hansen on Wednesday night after they searched his home and office. Investigators also discovered several videos of child pornography. Of course you did, because this person's got boundary issues, okay? Several videos of child pornography that Hansen allegedly possessed and distributed. So didn't just get them, he distributed them. Authorities say the child porn images were unrelated to his chiropractic practice. Hansen has a court appearance scheduled for Monday. I hope they throw the book at him. I'd love your comments on this. I know most of you are disgusted. I certainly am, and it's continued to be a problem, this hidden camera thing. And so, folks, again, if you have young ladies in your family, you have to teach them how to watch out for these things, how to use their cell phone. There's apps, there's different devices where you can catch hidden cameras, and they're everywhere, guys. I'm telling you, it's a big deal. It's a problem. So do not take it lightly. And just because you're in a church bathroom or a doctor's office, this was a chiropractor. Okay. And so we're taking these things for granted, and it's quite disturbing. I find it beyond disturbing to hear such things. It's beyond sickening. So I'm so glad it's making the news so that it gets pushed back. And I'm very happy to see that they are prosecuting people for this. That's very good. Put him in jail, put his name in the paper, make sure everybody knows this guy did this, because that's very, very dangerous behavior. Okay. So again, something for us to be careful about. Now, we talked about China and how they were going to be increasing their persecution based on an edict that they had put out, that they were basically shutting down a lot of the home churches. And sure enough, we are seeing the results as Christian house church leaders are arrested and detained by authorities on what they call fraud charges. Okay. Now, this is going to be interesting. 3 leaders of an arrested, unregistered Christian house church in Jiang City in central China have been arrested by communist authorities and detained on fraud charges, reigniting concerns over religious freedom in China. And of course, you can read more about the details. The arrests were approved, and they mark a repeat of legal action against the same individuals. So these are not people that didn't get in trouble before. They've already had their eye on them, and they're using them as an example. And some of you, of course, would get very upset, and you're like, my goodness, this is horrible persecution. And you're right, it is. But you should also understand the history that precedes this. At the same time the United States was being formed, in fact, when the compact was being made to bring people over here with the Mayflower and what have you, at the same time, in the East, doors were being closed. China, Japan, others were actually closing their doors because they had seen through the Saturnalia things. They had seen through the fake and the phony, and their civilizations had ancient roots. So they basically rejected and, in fact, slaughtered Christians when they came this way. So it's actually traditional in the East to heavily resist, especially Roman Catholic Christianity. So again, understand that this is not a new thing. It is actually cultural for them to heavily resist the, again, Roman Catholic version of Christianity. So you're going to continue to see those types of pushback because of the fact that it's actually deeper than you may realize. So it's not just anti-Mashiach. It is anti-certain church practices. So the more you get into it, the more you go, ooh, there's nuance to this. Yeah, there is. But nevertheless, it's still persecution. And it's still overhanded management of peoples as if they need a parent to tell them where they can or cannot go. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people going to New Age. I don't think anybody's parenting them to get out of there, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, you should parent them all out of the movie theaters as well. But you don't see that happening. So, so much for the government really caring about you. I just believe the government doesn't like competition. It's that simple. Speaking of government, there are some that actually make good decisions. I mean, they're not all wicked. I was really actually quite happy to see Denmark's government aims to ban access to social media for children under 15. I think it should be banned for everybody. I banned myself from social media. I did. You guys who follow me on social media are probably wondering, where did Peter go? I literally started spending so much more time on other things in the Word and other things as well. But you know what I realized is that how much time I was wasting on social media. So this is really good. Denmark's government on Friday announced an agreement to ban access to social media for anyone under 15, ratcheting up pressure on big tech platforms as concern grows that their kids are getting too swept up in digitized worlds of harmful content and commercial interests. And they've got good reason to be concerned. The move would give some parents, after a special assessment, the right to let their children access social media from age 13. It wasn't immediately clear how such a ban would be enforced, so they like passing laws without thinking about how to enforce them. But, sometimes they're ceremonial, right? Sometimes they're going, we made this illegal, even though there's no real way for us to check. So it really just still comes down to what the parents are doing. And it does bring us back into responsibility for our environment. I mean, after all, you're just not going to get away with it. And remember, I mentioned Italian pasta. Well, Italian pasta is poised to disappear from American grocery shelves. Can you believe that, guys? I can't. I think that's crazy news, but that's exactly what's being suggested. Your favorite Italian origin fusilli and macaroni are poised to disappear from U.S. supermarket shelves, and Italy's biggest pasta exporters say import and anti-dumping duties are totaling too much money for them to be competitive. You can read the rest of that story at the Wall Street Journal. And again, that's behind a paywall. Even if we did pay for it, we couldn't broadcast it, so we don't bother. So you want to take a look at that. But nevertheless, one of the things that I'm concerned about with that is Italy happens to be one of the countries that grows good wheat, good quality pasta, the kind that doesn't get you as sick as some of the others. So the fact that it's now going to not be there, it's you're taking a healthy choice off the shelves. What are you leaving us behind? That may be a way to make sure you buy a different wheat that you weren't buying because you had an option. Just saying. Eliminate the option. Force people to consume American wheat. But there's a reason why Americans who had brains were not eating certain things, right? So now it's being forced. Very interesting time, folks. Very interesting time. And of course, the bribery comes out. This usually happens when things are really, really rough. So Trump is promising a $2,000 check. All right, $2,000. Whoo, man, that's it. Your problems are over. You're saved. Your problems are gone. You're going to get a $2,000 check. And when are you going to get, I don't know, 6 months from now, a year from now, somewhere down there? It's not going to help you anytime soon. But hey, makes for a great headline. Trump promises $2,000 check for every American that, thanks to tariff revenue he's collected. Donald Trump has vowed to give $2,000 check to every American thanks to the tariff revenue his administration has collected. The president made the exciting announcement on Sunday morning, blasting those who hated on his tariff strategy as fools. You fools! I pity the fool. And he said that the dividend of at least $2,000 would be paid to everyone, just everybody. Come, y'all can get some. You can get some. Everybody can get some. Bar high income people, although he did not state what the threshold for that would be. So we all have to wait to see what he's actually going to do, because announcing is easy. Following through is the hard part, right? So we're going to keep an eye. Now, speaking of keeping an eye, one of the things getting much more serious, the earth doesn't care about politics. The earth responds because the earth responds. And dozens of earthquakes have rattled Japan after a tsunami warning was canceled. This has become quite the active geological area. We were watching this already, and now at least 25 earthquakes have struck off the coast of Japan in the last 24 hours, with some reaching strengths over 6.0 in magnitude. The largest in the series was recorded as a 6.8. Guys, that is a serious earthquake, and prompted a tsunami warning that lasted several hours before being canceled, according to the United States Geological Survey. The quakes ranged in strength from a 4.5, with many reaching magnitudes over 5 that could cause damage and possible loss of life. So something interesting is going on in Japan and in the Ring of Fire. I love your comments, guys, because I know some of you are watching this. I know my brother David does. He keeps an eye on that Ring of Fire stuff, and I'll tell you what, it is really, really getting kind of scary. Not kind of scary. I mean, it is scary. Some of the things that we are seeing happening. In the meantime, you got, the Great Gatsby party going on over here. While people are hurting, while people are suffering, this was a bad look. Trump attends another extravagant party at Mar-a-Lago as thousands hit food banks amid shutdown. Not only thousands of people on SNAP benefits, his own military is hitting food banks. I saw a video with military personnel in the food bank lines because, again, government shutdown means they don't get paid too. So that could be really bad if that continues too long. And there was other damage and other things that the earth began to show us. So this was down in Brazil, and we speak about Aka on our family and friends in Brazil. We have family there, we have friends there, and we don't want to see them harmed. And so this unprecedented tornado tears through southern Brazil and killing at least 6. So there was serious damage that occurred there in southern Brazil. A deadly tornado tore through a state in southern Brazil, killing 6 people and injuring at least 750. Local authorities said that's a lot of injuries, guys. Paraná Governor Ritanho Junior described the tornado as an unprecedented catastrophe in the history of the state. What does this say? How many times have we seen this? Unprecedented. Never happened before. Never seen this before. Winds have topped 250 kilometers, 155 miles an hour. Didn't we just see the hurricane that went through Jamaica was unprecedented as well? In the ravaged town of Rio Bonito de Iguaca, according to CIMEPAR, the state's meteorological service, the tornado affected approximately 90% of the residents and commercial buildings in the municipality, according to the state's government. Wow, that was rough. Imagine being there, folks. That was a rough city. The rough city dancers were down there, man. That is not good. But you see, this is the earth reacting to man. And how many times do we see this? David, how many times? I see you there. I see you. Okay, another one of these once in 1,000-year events. How many times have we seen in the last year, or just the last 2 years, where the headline was unprecedented, once in 100 years? There's a little too many of those, wouldn't you say? Look at this, guys. Same part of this is again in the east. Typhoon Kalamagi kills more than 140 people. That's a lot of people in a storm. So I want you to think about storms in the United States and other places. We don't usually hear about more than, say, 5 or 6 people that get killed in a storm. 140 dead? That's a lot of people. Leaving trail of mass destruction has now reached Vietnam. And it has slammed into Vietnam's already storm-battered coastline. Today, after killing more than 140 people in the Philippines, the storm is on land in the provinces of Dak Lak and Gia Lai, with the strongest sustained winds up to 90 miles an hour, warnings of 26-foot waves. And Vietnam's deputy prime minister urged authorities to treat Kalamagi as urgent and dangerous. Well, I would say so if it's done that level of damage. And so again, but here's the thing, guys, governments and everybody, they're all running out of money for all these disasters. They're all running out of ways to solve it. It's getting to where it's going to be, a free for all. You're, fend for your life. And I've told you that what we're seeing, and what I think we're already seeing more and more evidence of, is mass migration, that people in entire areas will have to go. Look at Ukraine. He's a perfect example. Now that those power stations are gone, Ukraine is unlivable. All right. It's unlivable in the winter. It's extremely cold there. And you're talking about no power stations. You're talking mass migration now. You watch, you're going to see mass migration just as we predicted would occur. And I don't believe it's the only place you're going to see that. I think you're going to see it in other places. This story, as we're coming to a close here, was a really good story. I was very glad to see. People are recovering from pornography, recovering from the wickedness that has been a plague on mankind for quite some time. When I went into the work of the ministry, the numbers were 40 to 50% were addicted to pornography, and it got all the way up to 90%. And I'm praying very hard that we see a turnaround. And this is a really interesting story. Jenna Jameson, some may know that name. I don't personally, but apparently was a big porn star, and she was known for her body and sin before leaving adult film career behind for faith. And former adult film star Jenna Jameson now helps others find Mashiach after getting baptized. This is great news, and this is what we need to see in our country. We need to see a turn around, and this is a good thing to see, folks. So we need to encourage it. We need to shout about it and be grateful. She's moved beyond her adult film actress past in order to help people find Mashiach. And Jameson opened up about her redemption as she reflected on her past and her choices. And this is what our young ladies need. They need to hear from these people who went down these roads, guys, and they need to hear this was a bad idea. I shouldn't have done that. Now I'm coming back to Mashiach. We need to encourage that. We need to applaud that, because they're going to come and tell the stories. They're going to come and tell the secrets of the industry and all the wicked and all of that. We need that. We need that to save our young people, to save our whole generation that may think OnlyFans is a great plan. Don't get this grandfather started. I got granddaughters. That stuff just makes me beyond angry. It just strikes a chord in me super hard. That might as well be, as far as I'm concerned, OnlyFans trick people into the, only difference between them and the guy hiding the cameras is the tricking talk. They talked them into it. That's the only difference. That's very wicked, just as wicked as the other guys, as far as I'm concerned. But that's just me. What do I know? What do I know? I don't know anything. You guys know everything. Tell me you tell me. I get too upset. I'm too much of a grandfather, man. I'm like, what? I want to light them all up. I'm telling you right now, my brothers have to help me. The veterans out there, y'all got to help me now. You got to help me because I like to light them all up. But anyhow, I digress. And we're going to close with this story, and this is a good story as well. It's a sad reality that we do continue to see violent persecution in our world. And we have recently heard about Nigeria, and we reported on that last week, how that the president had actually said that he may have to send in troops to Nigeria. Well, Congress has introduced a resolution condemning Christian persecution in Nigeria, and America cannot be silent was the message that was put forth. And Representative Riley Moore of West Virginia has introduced a resolution condemning the violence, persecution of Christians in Nigeria, and calling for the U.S. to have decisive action to hold the perpetrators accountable. And the move follows President Donald Trump's recent announcement designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern. And I do think that that is a good thing. In the event that, they have to send in, to me, this is the good use of force. And again, not to kill, but to say, hey, we're all done with this, right? We're going to push back against that. And so this does encourage, and we certainly want to see these things prevail in our world, where we don't see entire villages being torched by those who think they're entitled to do such things. So again, my encouragement to all of you is to continue to pray, to intercede on behalf of your brothers and sisters is our responsibility. As a matter of fact, I believe that's the way we lay our lives down for our friends. I believe that's one of the things that we're called to do. And so those of you that are seeing in these stories, maybe areas of the world that are in challenge, don't forget to say a word of prayer for them. Don't forget that there are people just like you and me who are believers, who are in these places of harm. And so thank you to all of you who have the courage and the heart, the temerity of character to continue to intercede even when your own world is experiencing its difficulty. I certainly know all of you have your challenges. Well, that's it for tonight. I pray this broadcast has been a barakah to you. You've had quite a few stories to cover, and I'm certainly hopeful that you were encouraged. Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you again to all of you who share the links, who like and subscribe, and we certainly are grateful and honored that you do. Thank you again for joining us. Shalom.